Imagine babysitting a K-pop idol on the busiest Christmas week of your life. Maeve Monroe, Petersburg's super-organized mayor's assistant, never expected a delayed flight to land a global heartthrob in her small southern city. When Maeve literally collides with Tae Kim, K-drama superstar and international sensation, her carefully structured life starts to unravel in the most unexpected way. From chaos in a coffee shop to stolen glances and late-night confessions, Maeve discovers that even the most disciplined woman can lose control. But can she survive babysitting a superstar without falling for him? Welcome to Christmas in Old Towne Love Stories, where ambitious women, unexpected love, and the holiday spirit collides. If you believe in soft love, second chances, and Christmas miracles, like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. This is our first love story, and we'd appreciate your support. All of these stories are a part of the world for our upcoming film, Christmas in Old Towne. Now, let's get into the story. Maeve Monroe believed in plans. Graduating at the top of her class from Howard and then Harvard had not been luck, it had been discipline, precision, intention, and prayer. A beautiful woman in her mid-20s with glowing mocha skin, dark curls always secured in a neat bun, and a minimalist wardrobe that whispered elegance instead of shouting for attention. Maeve was the assistant to Petersburg's first female mayor, a historically rich small Virginia city with more influence than outsiders realized. Behind every polished press conference and every bold policy decision stood Maeve, quiet, efficient, indispensable. Her life ran like a symphony of predictable rhythms. Her apartment mirrored that order, books alphabetized, slate and ivory pillows arranged just so on her gray sectional, a single abstract painting on the wall, no clutter, no chaos. Maeve didn't crave control because she wanted power. She craved it because stability felt safe. And on this particularly cold December morning, 2 days before Christmas, stability was about to lose the battle. The heart, after all, does not consult a calendar. Maeve hurried through the crisp air toward Johnny's coffee, heels clicking with purpose. She balanced the mayor's usual dark roast in one hand and her own matcha in the other. It was her last full day before the holiday break, and her to-do list was longer than the mayor's speeches. Just minutes earlier, Madame Mayor had texted, "Surprise task for you today." Maeve hated surprises. Johnny smiled as he passed over the drinks. "Merry Christmas, Maeve." "Merry Christmas, Johnny," she replied, eyes focused on not spilling either cup. And then impact. Coffee launched into the air. Cups collided. Warm liquid splashed across her ivory trench coat like a cruel holiday joke. "Oh no, I have a meeting," she gasped, staring at the spreading stain. "Watch where you're going," a deep voice barked. A muscular bodyguard stepped forward instantly. Then a sharp, tiny woman snapped, "Clumsy, you spilled coffee on him." Maeve lifted her head and forgot about the coat. There he stood, tall, immaculate, devastatingly handsome, even with coffee dripping from the sleeve of his cream suit. His dark eyes were sharp. Controlled, but surprised. "I think," Maeve said evenly, "he needs to watch where he's going." Before he could respond, his team ushered him toward the door. But as he disappeared, he looked back just for a second, and in his gaze was something she couldn't name. Not annoyance, not ego, something softer. Maeve shook herself out of it, ordered new drinks, and told her pulse to behave. Have you ever experienced anything like this before? It feels like the calm before the love storm. Write in the comments and let us know if you think this is the last time Maeve will see this beautiful man who is drenched in coffee. Now back to the story. By the time she reached City Hall, Madame Mayor's voice was already echoing down the hallway. "Maeve," she shouted. The mayor, radiant and formidable in her mid-60s, had transformed Petersburg during her tenure. She had also built a dream team of powerful women around her, women like Maeve, Janice, the communications director, and Brianna, the urban planner. But Madame Mayor did have one well-known weakness: beautiful rich men, and she rolled out the red carpet when any were in town. "Why are you wearing the latte?" the mayor asked Maeve as she took her coffee. "It's a long story," Maeve replied. "Never mind that," the mayor said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. "We have a star in the conference room. Tae Kim is here, and he is as fine as the day is long." Maeve blinked. "I'm sorry, who?" Janice burst in laughing. "I'm in my 40s, and even I know who Tae Kim is." Brianna added dramatically, "Girl, you don't watch K-dramas." Maeve did not. Her off hours were usually spent reviewing briefs, not binge-watching romances. "Tae Kim," Janice continued, former K-pop idol turned K-drama sensation. International heartthrob, billboards from Seoul to New York. Madam Mayor beamed. And he's now in our city. Due to icy weather, his connecting flight had been delayed. A short stay had turned into an overnight visit. A media opportunity, phenomenal publicity. The mayor grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the conference room. Brianna and Janice followed. Maeve stepped inside. And her stomach dropped. There he was, the man from the coffee shop, no sight of the spill. Now dressed in black, something designer, polished, composed, sunglasses resting coolly on his face. Tae Kim, his gaze found hers instantly, recognition flashed, and something else this time, she felt it. A tingle that she chose to ignore. It wasn't just Tae Kim. The bodyguard and the tiny, angry woman were there too. Janice whispered to Maeve. That's his manager, Ji-sun. They say she's the baddest in the business. Shot back, she looks like the maddest in the business. Mayor shook hands with Ji-sun and then clapped them with delight. Maeve, dear, you'll be Tae's guide while he's with us. Show him our city. She thought to herself, or did the mayor mean babysitter? Maeve forced a professional smile, requested a private word with the mayor in another office. Brianna shook her head. Janice followed to listen in on her official protest. Madam Mayor, with all due respect, this wasn't on my agenda today. Isn't there someone else who can give this actor a tour? Janice, perhaps. The mayor's brows furrowed. Actor. Tae Kim isn't just an actor. You really must get out more, my dear. Janice jumped in. Besides, I'm busy strategizing how we can leverage his visit. It's not every day we have a Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise type in Petersburg. The mayor added. And an intern wouldn't have the savoir faire for this level of guest. Maeve frowned. But Madam Mayor, he's pompous. Some affluent bratty star. Just look at the coffee on my new trench. It's all his fault. Mayor waved her head dismissively. Did you see him? In my younger days, I would have requested that he pour that coffee wherever he wanted. Janice started giggling. Sometimes, the mayor said gently, we need to let life shake us up. Was final. Maeve returned to the conference room, composure restored. But beneath the calm exterior, curiosity stirred. Because for the first time in a long time, a surprise didn't feel entirely unwelcome, Maeve looked at Tae. Then Ji-sun. Then the silent bodyguard. Well, she said with a small suck of her teeth, it appears I'm your tour guide. Ji-sun's eyes flicked to the faint coffee stain still shadowing Maeve's coat. Recognition dawned. This will be interesting, she said dryly. Ji-sun turned crisply toward the bodyguard. Bruno, we rented a simple vehicle. Keep them moving for a few hours. I'll stay with Janice to coordinate tomorrow's media appearance. No paparazzi, no leaks, no surprises, at least not till we're ready. Bruno gave a single nod. Ji-sun turned back to Tae. You still will meet the cast in Times Square on Christmas. This delay changes nothing. Tae sighed softly before facing Maeve. I'm sorry about earlier. I truly didn't see you. Pretended as if she didn't hear him. Apologies necessary. Ji-sun cut in immediately before looking directly at Maeve. Do not exhaust him. His schedule is intense. Maeve's head jutted back. Tae smiled faintly. I'm fine. I'm actually looking forward to seeing your city. Preferably without coffee shops, Ji-sun added before gliding out. Maeve waited a beat. Is she always like that? Tae laughed, and it was warmer than she expected. This is relaxed, Ji-sun. You should see her when she's stressed. You survived that? Couldn't survive without her, he replied. Best manager in the world. Outside, the simple car awaited, only that there was nothing simple about the vehicle. It was a sleek black Mercedes SUV. Tinted windows. Plush interior, black leather, black trim. Black everything. Maeve slid into the backseat beside him and instantly became aware of how little space suddenly felt like. He smelled absolutely wonderful. She hated that she smelled wonderful. Maeve breathed, regained composure. Ready, Ms. Assistant? Tae asked. She shot him a look. I'm always ready. Bruno pulled away from City Hall. The tour began. Hello, loves. Is there a little chemistry brewing between Maeve and Tae? Please leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now back to the story. The renovated Old Town district shimmered under winter light. Brick warehouses from the tobacco era stood proudly beside restored Federal and Greek Revival buildings. Holiday wreaths hung from wrought iron balconies. Twinkle lights framed shop windows. Maeve looked at her watch, then shifted into professional mode. This is one of Virginia's largest concentrations of 19th century architecture, she explained. We've preserved the exterior character while allowing mixed-use development inside. Tae listened, really listened, his gaze moving from building to building. It's charming, he said carefully. Very different from Seoul. Too small for you, she teased lightly. He glanced at her. Small isn't bad. Small means people look at each other. She blinked. That answer hadn't been flippant, it was unexpected. At a narrow downtown record store, Tay ran his fingers over vintage vinyl sleeves like they were artifacts. He attempted to pronounce a jazz legend's name and butchered it completely. Maeve laughed, a real laugh. Not polite, not restrained. He froze slightly, watching her instead of the record. She covered her mouth. Sorry, that was terrible. I was an idol, he said defensively. Not a historian. You were really an idol, she asked, arching a brow. He tilted his head. You truly don't know who I am. Wasn't arrogance. It was disbelief. Maeve shrugged. I've been busy running a city. Stared at her a second longer than necessary, and something in his expression shifted. For perhaps the first time in a long time, he was standing in front of someone who didn't already have a version of him in their head. The local HBCU campus buzzed with rehearsal energy. The VSU marching band practiced for the Christmas parade, brass cutting through the cold air. Tay's eyes lit up. The band was phenomenal. Before Maeve could stop him, he was attempting to mimic the drum major's choreography. It was surprisingly good. Oh, Maeve laughed. You like this, huh? He grinned. Music is universal. He nailed the final step. Folks nearby started to recognize him, pulling out their phones, eyes lighting up with excitement. We should go, she whispered. Are you feeling protective? Tay smiled. Maeve snapped. Isn't that what Bruno is for? Tay just laughed. He had enjoyed himself, but followed without protest. At the historic roller skating rink, a Petersburg staple, Tay laced up skates like he'd done it 100 times before. 80s funk and soul blared from the speakers. Please tell me you're not about to perform, Maeve warned from outside the rink. Come join me, he smirked, but she shook her head. No. Moments later he spun, clean, smooth, effortless. He did fast footwork, crossing his feet while moving rapidly and moonwalking backwards. A small group clapped. Maeve tried and failed to hide her admiration. He skated toward her slowly. You're smiling, he said softly. I am not. You are, she crossed her arms. You're very versatile. His eyes darkened just slightly. And you're very careful, Maeve raised an eyebrow. Careful? Tay's eyes dropped, not boldly but deliberately, to her mouth, then back to her eyes. Yes, he said quietly. Careful. The music inside faded behind the pounding in her ears. She felt it, a shift, the space between them tightening. I'm responsible, she retorted, but it came out softer than she intended. For everyone else, he replied. But not yourself. They stepped outside. Maeve's phone buzzed. It was Jules. Jules had been her best friend since their roommate days at Howard. Maeve went on to study American politics at Harvard. Jules earned her master in computer engineering from Virginia Tech. Jules spent her days online and her nights deep in K-dramas. Maeve answered the video call without thinking. Maeve, are you actually in the same city as Tae Kim? Jules squealed. How did you know? You know what? Never mind, I'm working, Maeve whispered. Jules narrowed her eyes. No, you're blushing. I am not, Jules cackled. Girl, this is good for you. I haven't seen that look since, what was his name, that little politician with the campaign posters and the fake smile. Maeve's expression tightened. Alexander. Had been years. She hadn't dated seriously since. He had loved cameras more than he loved her. Loved handshakes, speeches, optics. In the end, he chose a pageant winner with a brighter spotlight and better polling numbers. Maeve learned something that year. Love, in public, was rarely about love. And she had promised herself she would never be somebody's strategic decision again. Suddenly, Tay leaned into frame behind her. Hello, he said smoothly. The memory-shattered silence. Then Jules' face turned crimson. Nice to meet you, she squeaked. Maeve closed her eyes. I'll call you later, boo. Jules squeaked out. Ooh, you better. Maeve quickly hung up, then cleared her throat. Sorry, she's dramatic. Tay tilted his head. So, you don't watch my dramas? No, you don't listen to my music. No, but you're smiling again. There it was. Maeve tried to catch herself, but she could not contain the smile. Tay laughed. I need at least one yes from you today, she said. Why do you need that? But he had no response that he was willing to share. Maeve took a deep breath. We have a few more tourist sites. Are you ready? He replied, always ready. Air grew colder as they stepped into the historic district. The festive downtown lights faded into brick pathways and weathered buildings that had survived centuries. Maeve took him on a Civil War tour, followed by an historic underground railroad site. This city has seen everything, Maeve said. He listened differently now. Not as a tourist. As someone absorbing her, At Battlefield Park, Maeve pointed out where soldiers had camped, how long the sieges lasted, how brutal the winters must have been. A cool breeze slipped between them. Petersburg, she added gently, her voice softening. It's always been a place where people show up for each other. Families grow up together. Even now, this city is tight. If someone's hurting, everybody knows. If someone's celebrating, everybody shows up. She gave a small smile. You don't really disappear here. Tay was quiet. In my world, he said slowly, we're always moving. Airports, stages, sets, different cities every week. Nudged a stone with the toe of his shoe. You can be surrounded by thousands of people and still not belong anywhere. Turned toward him, fully now. You have millions of fans, he exhaled softly. Fan clubs aren't really a community. I'm grateful for them, truly. But they love a version of me, a character, a performance. A beat. They don't know the whole me, and I don't really know them. That landed. She looked at him differently now. Not the celebrity, not the stranger from the coffee shop. Just a man standing in the wind. That sounds lonely, she said quietly. He gave her a small, unguarded smile. It is. They walked a little further, the air shifting heavier and softer at the same time. At the underground railroad stop, Maeve explained how families once risked everything for a chance at freedom. How courage often required sacrifice. Tay listened carefully, studying the space like he was trying to memorize it. These families gave up everything, he said quietly. Maeve replied. Freedom costs something, she hesitated. Just like fame costs something. Settled between them, not awkward, aware, he looked at her, not playful, not teasing, seeing, as they crossed uneven cobblestones, her heel caught, she stumbled. His hand shot out, steady and sure, gripping her waist, not her arm, her waist. Her breath left her in a rush. For a moment, they were impossibly close. His hand firm against her back, her palm pressed against his chest. Solid, warm, real, neither moved. You okay? He murmured, but his voice had dropped. She could feel his heartbeat. She whispered, but neither of them stepped away. The world narrowed to breath and heat and history under their feet. Then Bruno walked up, breathing hard and destroying the moment. Getting winded keeping up with you too, boss. Just like that, Maeve's professional mask went back on and she stepped back from Tay. Maeve checked her watch. Okay, it's almost time to get you back to City Hall. I don't want to get on Ji-sun's bad side. Bruno grunted out an opinion, a rare occasion. I think she likes you. Both Maeve and Tay started laughing. Tay put his hands in the form of a prayer. Can we make one more stop? Maeve said, okay, where? Tay said, there was a boutique we passed in Old Towne. I only have my carry-on. The delay messed me up. My bags have already flown to NYC. Maeve understood with a smile. No stylist, huh? No stylist, he laughed. I need a few things for the media thing tomorrow, and there's something else I'd like to do. Maeve lifted her shoulders in a small, reluctant shrug. Okay. Tay nodded to Bruno, who stepped forward and pulled the door open. Maeve slid into the backseat first, smoothing her coat beneath her. A second later, Tay ducked in beside her, the door thudding shut against the winter air. The space felt suddenly smaller. Their hands rested inches apart on the seat between them, close enough that she was acutely aware of it. Heat radiated from him, warm and steady, and to her complete dismay, her stomach gave a soft, traitorous flutter. She kept her eyes forward. As if that might help, when they walked into the boutique, the owner, Miss Evie, almost lost her composure. Take him, she exclaimed. Oh my, Maeve, you need to come over more often if you have surprises like this. Tay laughed as Miss Evie fluttered around him, draping options over his arm like she was styling royalty. Textures layered over textures. Leather, wool, silk, possibility. He chose a vintage leather bomber with a plush fur collar and a burgundy suit that made Miss Evie audibly gasp. A few pairs of perfectly faded denim followed, along with boots that hit the hardwood floor with a deliberate, masculine weight. Then came the fitting room. Maeve told herself she would be professional about this. She lasted exactly 12 seconds. She could see him shirtless standing there holding a hanger deciding what to wear first. His body unbelievable. He stepped out in the bomber first, adjusting the collar as he glanced in the mirror. The jacket tapered cleanly at his waist, broad shoulders filling it with effortless precision. Years of choreography and discipline lived in his posture, in the way he stood, in his muscles, in the quiet control of his movements. The denim was worse. It fit like it had been custom-made, hugging lean muscle in a way that made her throat go dry. When he turned to check the back in the mirror, she very nearly forgot how mirrors worked. She lifted her phone to cover her face, scrolled nothing. Blinking felt optional, then the burgundy suit. the jacket buttoned low, the fabric pulling just slightly across his chest before settling. He adjusted his cuffs with slow, practiced ease, not showy, not trying, which somehow made it unbearable. Maeve pressed her lips together, willing her pulse to behave. She had negotiated contracts, managed crises, coordinated press conferences. She was not about to be undone by a well-cut lapel. And then he emerged in a midnight blue silk pajama set. The fabric caught the light as he rolled his shoulders. Everything was loose enough to suggest, fitted enough to confirm. He ran a hand through his hair, casual, unbothered. "A boy needs his rest," he said, winking at her. Maeve's brain short-circuited. Rest. If only her heart wasn't currently rehearsing a drum solo against her ribs. She offered a composed smile that felt like it belonged to someone far more stable than she currently was. "What is happening?" she thought. "Get it together, girl." "This is not it," Bruno said to Tay. "You shopped light today, boss." Maeve said, "This is light." Tay looked at her, something in his expression softer now, hungrier. "Not done," he said quietly. "You have to let me make this morning up to you." His eyes twinkled, but there was something more beneath it. Maeve started to protest, already rehearsing her polite refusal, but Bruno cleared his throat and pointed to the faint coffee stains still marking her trench. She sighed. "Fine, one outfit." Miss Evie practically vibrated with excitement, but Tay gently intercepted the hangers from her hands. "I've got this." Raised a brow. That should have concerned her more than it did. He chose deliberately. Confidently, as if he had always known exactly how she should look, she tried on piece after piece. And with every change, a few more curls slipped free from her bun, tumbling down her shoulders like they had been waiting for permission. Tay thought he was enraptured, but then came the dress, blood red, fitted, clean lines. It stopped just at her knees, paired with vintage boots that made her legs look longer than she remembered them being. She stepped out. Tay straightened, actually straightened. "This one," she laughed, giving a small spin. The fabric moved like it had been tailored for her. "That one," he said without hesitation, then grinning. "Now who's the K-pop idol?" He laughed, but this time it wasn't performative. It was open, warm. And when his laughter faded, his eyes didn't. They lingered, not polite, not passing, intent. He wasn't scanning her outfit. He was seeing her confidence, the subtle curve of her smile, the way she held her shoulders when she forgot to be cautious. Even Bruno nudged him with a knowing look. Tay didn't look away. He reached for a bedazzled vintage gold necklace from the display and held it up in front of her throat. "It's too flashy," she protested quickly. "It's not flashy," he said, his voice dropping a register. "It just makes people look where they should have been looking anyway." She stopped breathing. For a moment, heat bloomed slowly, steadily from her chest outward. Was he flirting? Did he actually see her? "Don't be ridiculous, Maeve." Global star, international heartthrob. Entire continents screaming his name, and yet he stepped closer. Closer than necessary. His fingers brushed the back of her neck as he moved her curls aside. "Let me put it on." The air shifted. His cologne wrapped around her, expensive, layered, unmistakable. Oud wood, Bulgarian rose, something darker beneath it, success, confidence. Her pulse stumbled, the clasp clicked softly into place. "You hide in neutrals," he murmured near her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "But you were always meant for color." The words slid down her spine. Normally, instinctively, she would have stepped away, created distance. Restored order instead, she inhaled, then turned to face Tay. "You're staring," Maeve said. "Are you?" he responded. But just then Miss Evie ran over with a mirror, and Maeve could not hide the fact that everything was beautiful. She felt beautiful. "Live a little," Tay said, smirking. "Hey, loves, it's getting interesting. Do you feel the chemistry? What do you think happens next? Tell us in the comments. And where are you listening from? We'd love to see how far this story is traveling. Now back to Tay and Maeve. It's getting good." "Thank you," Maeve said to Tay as Miss Evie handed bags to Tay and Bruno. "You didn't have to," she added. "I did." Tay smiled that gorgeous smile. Miss Evie slid in with a wink. "Tay's got good taste. Maeve, he's as meticulous as you are." Bruno grunted with approval. Within an hour, they were back at City Hall, arms full of those glossy boutique bags. Tay had purchased everything for Maeve, even though she only asked for the one dress. The mayor spotted the bags immediately. "Well," she said, eyeing the labels. "Where is mine?" Tay laughed under his breath. Janice and Ji-sun launched into logistics about the Christmas Eve market, Petersburg's Pride and Joy holiday event. Twinkle lights strung from lampposts, booths selling handmade ornaments, cinnamon in the air, local kids rehearsing carols near the gazebo. While they talked, Tay's attention drifted to Maeve. As he stepped away with Ji-sun and Bruno, he looked over his shoulder. Check your phone. It wasn't a suggestion. She looked down to see a text from an unknown number. It's me. Lock it in. Her stomach flipped. That night's sleep did not visit either of them. Maeve sat cross-legged on her sectional, city lights filtering through her blinds, a mug warming her palms. Her phone buzzed. Tay texted, "Are you awake?" She stared at it longer than necessary. Maeve wrote, "Too much matcha, unfortunately." Tay responded, "Wanna take a drive? I got a rental." She exhaled slowly. She shouldn't, she absolutely should not, but her thumbs betrayed her. She texted, "Where?" When he asked for her address, her heart thudded so loudly she was sure the neighbors could hear it. "Hey loves, should Maeve have agreed to go? Would you go? Please leave a note in the comments." Now back to the story. It's getting juicy. Maeve's closet was a sea of beige and gray. Structured, safe, predictable. "Color, huh?" she muttered. Her fingers brushed the off-the-shoulder pink sweater Jules had forced her to buy last year, still had the tags on. "You need joy," Jules had said. "Fine, I'll wear pink," she thought, and fitted jeans that hugged her curves. Gloss, blush, mascara, not too much but enough. She pulled off her bonnet and let her curls fall free, wide, unapologetic, powerful. She barely recognized the woman in the mirror. She didn't look careful, she looked alive. When she stepped outside, the car waiting wasn't the sleek, tinted SUV instead, it was a vintage car. Something he'd rented and a part of his celebrity disguise. Tay leaned against it like he owned it anyway. He was wearing the leather jacket from the boutique, and a simple white tee, and the jeans he bought. The way he tugged his sleeve down to hide the Cartier watch on his wrist like it embarrassed him. Maeve thought, this man is fine. He interrupted her thoughts with, "You look beautiful." "You," Maeve blushed. "Ready?" He reached out for her hand. She nodded and grabbed his. The car smelled faintly like pine from an air freshener shaped like a Christmas tree. They drove nowhere, past brick houses glowing warm, past a park dusted in frost, past a couple arguing under a streetlight. He let her choose the music. She picked old school R&B. He knew every word. That surprised her. They ended up at a 24-hour spot where no one cared that he was take him. Truckers barely glanced up. They ordered like rebels, pancakes drowning in syrup. Sausage, fried apples, coffee too strong. Tay closed his eyes after the first bite. "This is so good," he groaned, almost reverent. "You're going to get in trouble," she teased. "Worth it." They talked about nothing. Then everything, family, loneliness. The strange isolation of being seen by millions, but known by no one. He admitted that he hadn't visited his folks in over a year, so was looking forward to his flight home before the ice had stranded him overnight in Petersburg. He was supposed to spend the day with them and then fly to New York for the press tour, but now it seemed unlikely. When he mentioned that his parents had moved from Seoul to Virginia, near Tyson's Corner, her fork froze midair. "Wait, you're basically from my backyard," he grinned. "Yeah, DMV born and raised, which is why I get annoyed in interviews when they say, 'Your English is amazing.'" She laughed, loud, unfiltered. He stopped talking, just watched her, and then he laughed too, like he'd earned that sound. When she mentioned she'd planned to drive up to DC that weekend, but stayed because the mayor needed her last minute, something flickered across her face. "Oh no," he said softly. "I'm the reason." Without thinking, she reached across the table and touched his hand. "You were a good reason to stay." Silence, not awkward, charged. His fingers turned slowly until they threaded through hers. Neither of them moved. Neither of them took a breath. "Then I'm not trying to pry," Tay said gently, "but who was the guy you and Jules mentioned earlier?" Maeve exhaled. "An ex. What happened?" She took a long sip of coffee, buying time, gathering herself. "Fame happened," she said finally. "Alexander, my ex, wanted to be a political star. I didn't fit the picture he was painting." Tay's brow tightened. "He actually said that. Not in so many words, but I could feel it. In the end, he chose someone shinier, better optics." Tay leaned back slightly stunned. "He was an idiot," she laughed softly. "That's one word for it." "No," he said, leaning forward now, intent. "I'm serious." His voice lowered. "You're brilliant, quick-witted, thoughtful, and—" He hesitated just a fraction. "Stunning." The word lingered. Who wouldn't want to risk everything for someone like that? Maeve couldn't answer. Heat bloomed up her neck, because the dangerous part wasn't that he said it was that he meant it. The waitress appeared with the check, reality once again. At 2 a.m., the world felt suspended. Tay walked Maeve to her building, slowly, too slowly. The night air had turned colder, but neither of them mentioned it. They stopped beneath the soft glow of the building light. For a second, neither moved. Tay looked at her face, then her lips, then back to her eyes, not charming, something dangerous. He stepped a fraction closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, that ridiculously delicious fragrance. Close enough that her pulse betrayed her. He looked like he wanted to say something reckless, or do something worse. Her breath stopped for a moment. His hand lifted slightly, like he might touch her face. He stopped himself. Instead, she took a small step backward toward the door. Professional instinct. Survival instinct. Self-preservation. "Good night, Maeve," he said, not Ms. Assistant, not teasing, just her name, and somehow that was more intimate than anything he'd said all day. "Good night, Tay," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. He lingered a second too long, then he turned. The door closed behind her. She leaned against it, breathing harder than she should have been, her fingers pressed to her lips like she could still feel the almost. Outside, Bruno pulled up in the Mercedes truck. "Boss, G-Sun is looking for you." Tay ran a hand over his face and exhaled. "Yeah," he muttered quietly. "I know." He didn't move right away. He looked back at the door once, just once. Then he jumped in the car and followed Bruno back. The next morning was chaos, screams, flashing cameras, glittering decorations. Vendors shouting over each other. Tay transformed. Charming, polished, controlled. He signed autographs, spoke about the upcoming movie, sang a few bars that made teenagers faint, promised to return to the city. Maeve watched from the sidelines, professional, composed, impenetrable, hair pulled tightly into that bun and wearing beige. When he finally approached her, cameras still flashing nearby, they both adjusted. "I pray that you have a safe flight to NYC," she said, voice steady. He nodded, equally formal. "Thank you for your hospitality." His eyes didn't match his tone. There was something there, something unfinished, something neither of them were brave enough to name. He stepped closer like he was about to say something real. The crowd noise dulled for a second. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Maeve thought, wait, is this it? Her breath slowed. And then, 5 minutes, Tay, Ji-sun called from across the square. Reality crashed back in. He straightened. The mask slipped back on. But before he fully retreated, he leaned in close enough that only she can hear. "You were a very good reason to stay, too." Then he walked out with Ji-sun and Bruno following behind him. The mayor noticed Maeve's quiet longing before Maeve even realized she was wearing it. "Job well done with Tay Kim," she said gently. "Go see your family." Gave a small smile. "It's Christmas Eve. It's too late. I'm happy to serve, Madam Mayor." Mayor didn't look convinced. "At least come by in the morning." "The staff is doing something small. Janice refuses to let us be miserable." Nodded. The next morning, she stood in front of her closet. It was a sea of beige, gray, neutrals, safe, and then red. That red dress hung right there in the middle. Tags still on, she slipped into the dress he chose. The vintage boots, the gold necklace. Her curls were full and wild today. Unapologetic, she wasn't dressing for him. She told herself that at least twice. When she stepped into City Hall, conversations stalled. Janice gasped. "Okay, ma'am." Brianna clutched her chest with exaggeration. "She has arrived." Maeve laughed, pretending she didn't know what Brianna meant, but she did. She felt different, braver. Just then the office door opened. No one looked at first. Then Janice froze. Maeve followed her gaze slowly. Tay stood there, no bodyguard, no manager, no performance, just him. And he wasn't smiling yet. He was just looking at her, like the red dress had knocked the air out of him. "You wore it," he said softly. Her pulse thundered. "Well, it's Christmas and it's the color red." She smiled, nervously. He stepped closer, holding up a set of car keys to the vintage car from before. "It's a 2.5-hour drive," he said. "To where?" Maeve questioned. Tay was quiet for a beat, like he was internally struggling with how to say this, but decided, let's just say it. He blurted out, "Want to go see our families for Christmas." Silence, the kind that feels like the moment before a wave crashes. "I thought you were in New York," she whispered. "Some reason," he said, eyes never leaving hers. "It was postponed." Mayor casually checked her phone, hiding a smile. Maeve's control snapped. She ran up full speed and hugged him, not polite, not restrained. He exhaled against her hair like he'd been holding that breath since 2 a.m. He wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. Brianna whispered to Janice, "Now this is better than any K-drama." In the corner, smiling uncontrollably, was the mayor, texting to Ji-sun the words, "Well done." On Highway 95 North was brutal, but at least it was moving. Tay and Maeve barely noticed. Too busy singing along to holiday music and drinking sweet potato lattes from a Korean coffee shop along the way. They talked about childhood Christmases, about missing home, about how strange it is to build a life somewhere else. and honestly how both had never felt this instantly comfortable with anyone before. He rested his hand on her thigh. She didn't move it. And then, somewhere near Quantico, traffic slowed to a crawl. Snow started falling soft. Slow. Cinematic. He reached over and turned the music down. The sudden quiet felt louder than the song ever had. "I almost kissed you yesterday," he admitted. She stopped breathing for a moment. "I know." "You pulled back. You had an event and then a flight." "I don't anymore." Air between them changed. He leaned in slowly, not rushed, not assuming, giving her space, giving her choice. She didn't move away. Instead, her hands found his jacket first, steadying herself. Then higher, into his hair. His incredibly soft hair, around his neck. The kiss wasn't frantic, it wasn't desperate. It was warm, certain, earned. A slow exhale they'd both been holding in. Electricity traveled quietly beneath the surface, not fireworks, but something steadier. Something that felt like it could last. When they finally parted, their foreheads rested together, breath mingling. He smiled softly. "This," he whispered, "is what Christmas should feel like." And she whispered back, "Don't get used to me being reckless." He smiled. "I don't want careful, I want you, all of you." They kissed again before the car behind them began honking. Tay put his hand up to say sorry while Maeve laughed. "I was planning on dropping you off, but how about we see our families together?" he said. "Together?" she questioned. "Together," he said, touching her cheek. "I don't want this holiday to end," he continued before adding. "And to be honest, whatever this is, I don't want that to end either." They spent Christmas moving between two worlds. DC first, loud, warm aunties asking questions over collard, turkey, seafood mac and cheese, gumbo, sweet potato mash, and sweet cornbread. Tay answered with effortless charm while eating from his third plate. Maeve's father, a music lover, had even more questions. Her mother pulled her aside in the kitchen at one point. "You met 2 days ago?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. Maeve nodded nervously, but before she could respond, her mother added, "Seems like you've known each other your whole lives." Maeve smiled. "I know that must sound a little crazy, but Mama, he sees me." Her mother thought for a second as she put on pot holders to remove the pecan pie from the oven. "No, not crazy. Sounds like love at first sight to me." Her mother waited a beat. "You look relaxed. You seem different." She smiled. "I feel different," Maeve admitted. Then Tay and Maeve traveled down the road to Northern Virginia, where his parents and his slightly younger sister Harin welcomed Maeve with open arms and knowing smiles, as if they were waiting for this type of visit. While a K-pop star, he wasn't allowed to date publicly, and since becoming an A-list actor, he hadn't yet been linked to anyone. His mother had made an abundance of food. A gorgeous feast of banchan, japchae, bulgogi, kimchi, fried chicken, and an ice cream Christmas cake. She pressed her hands and said to Maeve, "He laughs differently with you." Harin, who was immediately obsessed with her, quickly divulged about her opa. "You're the only girl he's ever brought home." That was all Maeve needed. She was relieved at the acceptance from both families. And the rest of the night they stole secret glances and delicious secret kisses. During the weeks that followed, long distance didn't weaken them. It refined them. Late-night FaceTimes across time zones. Maeve propped against pillows, Tay calling from hotel suites with city skylines behind him. She'd tease him about the screaming fans. He'd ask about zoning meetings like they were headline news. He flew her out whenever their schedules allowed. New York, LA, Chicago. Miami, Japan, New Zealand, Paris. She learned how to exist beside fame without being swallowed by it. And every time she returned to Petersburg, she carried something softer in her posture. Despite their best attempts at privacy, they became a quiet sensation. Phones appeared whenever they stepped out together. #May, Tay trended more than once. Janice was delighted. The mayor even more so. All of it was new to Maeve. None of it planned, and she handled it with grace. But fame has a way of circling back. One afternoon, the mayor called Maeve into her office with that careful look. "We have a state delegate visiting this week," she said. "He asked specifically for you to show him around." Her stomach dropped before the name was spoken. It was him. Alexander arrived polished. Of course he did, camera ready. Still handsome in the way ambition tends to be in public, he played it warm, nostalgic, familiar. In private, he lowered his voice. "I made a mistake," he told her. "I'm not with her anymore. She was shallow. I was young. I didn't know what I had." Stood perfectly still. "I did," she replied evenly. Alexander reached for her wrist, not aggressively but possessively, like history gave him permission. "You don't mean that." She gently but firmly pulled away. "I do." Then a calm voice behind them. "You heard my lady." Tay, he wasn't scheduled to be in town that week, but he was. Alexander turned slowly. Tay didn't raise his voice, didn't posture, didn't need to. He simply stepped beside Maeve, close enough that the message was clear. She said no. Was something in Tay's eyes then? No fear, it was claim. The delegate adjusted his cufflinks, smiled thinly, and left. Maeve exhaled only when he was gone. Tay looked at her. Are you okay? She nodded. Maeve fully embraced him like she fully embraced the relationship. He wasn't Tay Kim, the celebrity. No, he was Tay Kim, her baby. It was Jules who still could not believe that her best friend was with the worldwide star. In fact, she almost fainted one faithful day when Tay walked into the coffee shop unexpectedly. OMG, she whispered, fanning herself. This reaction was despite Tay secretly flying her into Petersburg as part of Maeve's surprise. Somehow Jules still lost composure upon seeing the K-drama star again. Tay could only laugh and shake his head. He hadn't brought Maeve's best friend in town for nothing. His proposal wasn't private. Like everything Tay did, it was intentional and very public. He was extremely proud of Maeve and wanted the world to know. A full block closed off near the little coffee shop where it all began. Twinkle lights overhead. The smell of espresso and winter air. He'd asked Maeve to wear the something special, but she didn't know why. She chose something with color. He knelt without theatrics. I don't want careful, he said. I want forever. I love you, Maeve Monroe. She didn't hesitate. The crowd roared with claps and congratulations, including both of their parents. Alexander watched the proposal replay on every news outlet, and for the first time in his career, he realized he had miscalculated. The Christmas wedding in D.C. was black tie and breathtaking. Maeve in a romantic white gown that honored her curves and her power. Tay in a tux so perfectly tailored it looked painted on. Jules joked it cost more than the venue, the cake. Half matcha, half coffee. And of course, several tiers. It was so tall that Maeve and Tay had to stand on chairs to look at the very top. Of course, Ji-sun, Janice, and Brianna had hijacked the planning. They wanted the very best for #MayTay. The menu. Southern, decadent, and upscale. After they said I do, a marching band burst through the doors, drums echoing through the ballroom. Tay and Maeve danced like they were back at the field watching the drum major practice. Janice and Brianna handed the mayor and Ji-sun tissues to blow their noses. Bruno cried the most later that month. Tay and Maeve traveled to Seoul. Maeve wore a traditional hanbok in soft pastels with a bouquet to match. She looked otherworldly and absolutely gorgeous. Tay watched her bow to his elders with grace that made his parents visibly emotional. She wasn't just accepted, she was claimed. A year later, they chose Petersburg as their home base. A deliberate decision. Fame could orbit them, but it would not define them. Maeve let her hair down, literally. Figuratively, she still was the devoted mayor's assistant, but her responsibilities grew. Tay balanced stages and spotlights with morning coffee runs and quiet evenings on their porch. Their love story was rooted in history, in family, in community, in a small-town Christmas miracle that began with a delayed flight and a coffee spill. Every December, when the Christmas Eve market lights flickered on, they would look at each other like they were still in that little vintage car on Highway 95. Still choosing, still certain, still in color. Tay used to measure his life in departures. Flight numbers, filming schedules, cities blurred from airplane windows. But Maeve had taught him something holy, how to stay, how to be still long enough for joy to catch up with him. It's almost Christmas, Tay said, glancing at the wall clock, not lifting his head from the pillow. It was 11:55 p.m. You singing at church tomorrow? Maeve smirked, sitting cozily beside him on their bed. You know they already have the songs picked out. Maeve laughed softly. A child is born. Tay looked at her then, really looked at her, not distracted, not rushing toward the next thing, just present. Warmth settled deep in his dark eyes. And I thank the Lord for that, he said quietly. Gently, almost reverently, Maeve took his hands and placed them against her tummy. She said again, her voice barely above a whisper. A child is born. For a split second, he didn't move. For once, the world wasn't pulling him somewhere else. Then he sat up immediately as he finally understood what she said. Maeve. His voice cracked with disbelief. I'm going to be a dad. She nodded, smiling through tears. We're going to be parents. The joy that erupted out of him was immediate and unfiltered. He laughed, a full, unguarded sound, and spun once on the bed like he used to on stage, as if happiness had always lived in his feet. Maeve leaned into him, laughing. I used to hate surprises, she said lovingly. And now, Tay chuckled. I can't get enough of them, she smiled. Her hand slid to the nape of his neck. His fingers traced the familiar curve of her curls, and they kissed, soft and sweet, not rushed. Full of longing and laughter and everything they had chosen, over and over again. A kiss that tasted now of decaf tea, midnight drives down 95, diner pancakes at sunrise, porch lights in Petersburg, and quiet mornings together in bed. When they parted, still close enough to kiss again and breathing the same quiet air, he murmured, "I love you." Maeve's eyes sparkled. "Forever!" He smiled, certain in a way he had never been before. Forever. In that moment, the small city Christmas miracle was complete. A love story that would outshine even the brightest holiday lights. This has been Christmas in Old Towne, where ambitious women, unexpected love, and the holiday spirit collide. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Hit the notification bell and fall in love with our stories. More romances are coming, Brianna's, Janice, and many others right here in Petersburg. The more people subscribe, the more love stories we can tell. Be blessed and have a very merry everything.